Hi everyone, welcome to the VSQUAD School stream. VSQUAD School is a platform where you can choose a course and go to the full pipeline, production pipeline based on real project. We also have a Discord community where you can share your artwork and connect with other artists. All link in the description. And now let's move to today's topic. Today our guest is Jonathan Amador, a 3D character artist. He will share his background of his character Yone with us. In the meantime, feel free to prepare your question in the chat. He will happy to answer them at the end of stream. Hi, John. Can you tell
Hello.
a bit about your career in 3D art?
Yeah, absolutely. I have prepared a cute little pure ref here. My name is Jonathan Amador. I come from Sweden, and I decided in 2017, a little bit earlier, but in 2017 I got into a 3D art school in Denmark called the Animation Workshop. And there I studied for about 3.5 years, learning um, 3D art for media production. So it was not just video games, it was also for movies, for commercial, for animation. But I knew from the start that I wanted to work in video games. And it was a bit of a weird time because 2020, I think, was it was time to have internship, and that was when COVID had just started. So that was a kind of rough period to you know get into the industry for the first time with very little experience. But I was able to get an internship at a company called Thunderful, based in Gothenburg, and there I worked on a game called Wavetail. As an intern, I did mostly rocks and props, and I was so bored of it because I knew early on that I wanted to do characters. But I was able to do one character there, this little crab character. It appears for like 2 seconds in a cutscene. It's not important at all, but I got to do it, so I was very, very happy with that. Um, and I have been in the industry now for about 6 years, and currently I am living in Malmö, Sweden, a city in the south of Sweden, and then I commute every day to Copenhagen to work at a company called Raw Power Games. That's a little short of my entire career. Any other questions, or should I just keep going?
Mm, for now, nothing. People in chat just say hi.
Hello. I guess I'll just keep
Yes, you
going.
can continue.
Okay. I don't know how good of a tips this is for aspiring artists, but for me personally, I've gotten 4 jobs. I worked at 4 companies on 5 different projects so far, and none of those were the ones that I applied for. It was, however, that I were kind of headhunted on LinkedIn specifically. So I would definitely advise people to get a LinkedIn profile if they haven't yet and get visible there because there's lots of recruiters there who are scurrying for new talent that they want to get in. So yeah, the dream studios that I've always aspired to work at, they have all rejected me, which has been a bit tough, but it has led me to new opportunities. And for example, currently I'm working at Raw Power Games, and it's an amazing company, and I would not change a thing about that. Um, I can talk a little bit about my portfolio and the art that I do. So I have an art station. I also have an Instagram account. I barely update that one. So if you want to contact me, I would suggest ArtStation. and I focus primarily on characters. I have been working with hand-painted texturing for the last couple of years now, uh, just only my craft. I did buy one of the VSQUAD courses to do the Wayfinder Shield, which was really helpful. That's when I got into 3D Coat. Um, and it has just, I've been able to sharpen my skills for texturing ever since then, and I'm very happy with the workflow that I currently have. And as I mentioned, there's lots of Riot Games fan art in my portfolio because that's the things that I enjoy. That's the art style that I enjoy. So you can see, Gromp, Braum, Misfortune, and Yone, which I will talk further about. And here's some close-ups of those characters. I tried to um, put them in the environment and see do they fit, and if they fit, I feel like I've accomplished something. And then for the next art piece, I try to see what they do and get further into the art style, like really understanding what they're doing. And Yone was the last piece I finished before I got this new job, and I'm fairly happy with a lot of things. I textured him in 3D Coat. I actually stopped texturing in 3D Coat after that because there was a few what can I say, workflows that I found annoying and that I preferred in Substance Painter. So now at work, I only pretty much texture in Substance Painter.
Okay.
When I texture, oh, a question
Yeah, we have a question from chat. Uh, what do you like the most about your job?
about what?
Your job.
My job.
Yeah.
Right now, I get to do one character every 1 or 2 weeks. So I'm currently working on a unannounced mobile project that is a team battler. That's pretty much everything I can say about it. I asked them before I got on the stream what I could say. Um, but it's a team battler, so you collect characters, which means that I have to create a lot of characters. So I'm very happy with just being able to do that each day. And it's through that work that I have now been able to, I wouldn't say perfect, but I'm very comfortable with my texturing process. However, I also constantly want to evolve and get better at my craft. So now that I've kind of done texturing painting pretty nicely, I kind of want to broaden my horizon and see, okay, well, how would I do PBR? How would I do, utilize normal maps and the roughness map and all of those? So in a few years' time, I'm probably gonna wanna view to that horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And another question from the same person. As a character artist, how much do you collaborate with tech art or rigging teams during the modeling phase to ensure the topology holds up for complex animation?
Hmm. I would say it's quite a lot. We are in conversations every single day, talking about either issues or how we can optimize things. From my experience, the riggers and animators, they're actually very skilled with working with what is there. So I have not gotten back a model and they told me like, oh, this topology is whack. We cannot do anything with it. It has more been like, would you prefer it this way? Like, how should we do this thing? The hair strands, should they go into the mesh or should they be loose meshes? So it's more like that. Yeah, that is the most back and forth we have with the rigger and animators. Okay, I will continue. One thing that really helped me with texturing uh, is this. You've probably seen it, texturing a ball and having all of the different texturing types. I don't know what to call them. You're dividing up the different light and shadow zones, and uh, having a process on how to apply them. And that is what I try to do in 3D. So I try to keep my 3D as close to how I would draw something 2D as possible. Um, so I have layers each one that is either light or halftones or core shadow slash terminus or reflected light. And then I set those layers to either multiply if they are shadow types, or color dodge if they are light types. And then I give them a color, and then underneath that we have these base colors, red around the cheeks if it's a bit rouged, or a little blue around the eye to make it a little bit more realistic. And that is how I apply my texturing process. In 3D Code, 3D Code is very good with just painting. However, I find just painting a little bit, painting and merging layers, I find that a little anxiety inducing. I like to have my layers separated so I can control them and change them as I see fit. And so therefore, I found having things separated this way makes me more confident in my process. And then I would like to talk about Substance Painter and 3D Code, the pros and cons that made me go for Substance Painter. The funny thing about these pros and cons is that they actually don't matter anymore, because the pros that drove me to Substance Painter I kind of don't use anymore. So this is completely, preference, and I will show you later on how I utilize it. But the pros with Substance Painter is that it's part of the Adobe suite, so it's easy to be in that ecosystem. The smart materials and the filters are very, very nice to have and attach them to the different layers. Anchor points can be very useful. And Anchor points is a way to reference a layer, like a mask, and use that on other layers, which can be very, very beneficial. And the layer system makes oh yeah, the smudge tool. I think it was the smudge tool that was like the deal breaker for me when I had to decide, because I hate the smudge tool in Substance Painter. No, in 3D Code. I thought it was awful. And then the one in Substance Painter behaved exactly the way that I wanted it to. So yeah. And then the layer system makes it non-destructive. And then the cons, of course, are that you can't merge layers, so files can get very heavy, and it can also get quite messy if you don't pay attention. And one of the perks of 3D Code is the export to Photoshop for paint over feature. I don't know what it's called when you take a screenshot in 3D Code and then you transfer it to Photoshop to paint over. Do you remember what that one is called? No, I don't remember what it's called, but um, it was really good to have that, and I wish that Substance Painter also had that. And then the pros of 3D Code is the inverse of that, that you can merge layers and you have that export to Photoshop for paint over feature. And the paint relief workflow is very freeing, but as I said, for me personally, it was a little bit anxiety inducing. When painting in 3D Code, I also followed this artist, Yekaterina Borinkan, I think it's pronounced, and her ways of working, because I was obsessed with League of Legends art style, and I tried to get as close to it as possible. So I tried to absorb as much of her knowledge as possible. And she's using a workflow where she starts with a grayscale and then use color ramps to create all of these juicy colors. And it works well up until a certain point, when you have to kind of paint over everything, and then it becomes sort of destructive again. And that's what kind of turns me off for that workflow. Oh yeah, and the grayscale, I actually don't or rarely make my characters grayscale. I just paint them straight up, and then I hope for the best. Not that I hope for the best, but I can quite easily see if it works or if it doesn't work, and then I put it always into Unity or with the other characters, and that's where I check, do they stick out in a weird way or do they blend in nicely? And it was actually through one of the VSQUAD's earlier streams that I learned that there's a shortcut for Windows to turn everything on your screen grayscale. And it was Control Windows and C. And if you press that, you make everything grayscale. I'm not sure if you can see that on my screen. But I wanted to repeat that for people who might not know it. And in order to activate this feature, you need to go to color filters. And then over here, there is a little button here that you need to tick on. Keyboard shortcut for color filters. And then it's set to grayscale. So that's a tip for you all.
We have a question from chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you use adjustment layers like color dodge or overlay to push your highlight and shadow non-destructive? Destructively. Oh, yeah.
Can I see? Oh no, I can't see the question. Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah. I can send you in the PM Discord.
Okay, sure. So the question was, do you use adjustment layers like color dodge or overlay to push your highlights and shadows non-destructively? The answer to that is yes, I do that. I create folders, a folder called shadow, and inside the shadow folder, I have shadows, ambient occlusion, bounce light. Those layers are set to normal, but then the folder itself is set to multiply, so that whatever is inside the folder will be multiplied. And then for the light layers, which I include light and highlights, that is set to color dodge. You can of course set it to overlay as well. It's a preference thing. One is better than the other, but they work very well for me. Okay. That was pretty much it that I wanted to go over here. We can look into Yone, or I can open up a Substance Painter file and show how it's all set up. What do you think we should do?
Yes, I think we can do.
What does the chat want to see, first of all?
Personal, what do you mean?
What do the people in the chat want to see first? Do they want to see Yone, or do they want to see a Substance Painter layer stack and see how I paint?
Okay, this person in chat say that would be awesome.
What did you say?
In chat say that would be awesome, and I'd love to see something Painter start.
Okay, let's start with that. So earlier today I painted one of Yone's masks, this one specifically. I wanted to paint him in granite and gold, and I took time on how long it took me to paint it. It took me 36 minutes in total. I don't think I have time to paint that, but I can show you all the layers that I worked on and how I worked on it. So this is the one that I worked on. And let's just deselect everything, not everything, but you know, and then walk through them one by one. So first I create an ambient occlusion mask by baking it the high poly and the low poly, and this is what it looked like. And then I kind of use that as a reference for where the shadow should go and all that stuff. I also keep this display setting close to hand where I can see the wireframe, because sometimes it can be difficult to see, okay, where exactly is the angle of the nose, where does it stop? and where does it go up and where does it tilt down. But then I usually put this down to a very low opacity because this one should not influence my decision making too much. You can, when you paint, you want it to be on that layer, not, oh, it was actually this AO layer that I keep over here. You can, of course, keep it, but I like to have my paintings done on its own and not use these generated masks too much. And then I create this shadow folder. This over here, and here is the shadow. There we go. And I set it to a fill layer, and then I give it an HSL perceptive, which is like the Photoshop sliders for hue, saturation, and value. And here's where I can control how bright it should be. If I go up to 1, it will disappear because then it's pure white. And then, in the middle, it's a nice even color. And here I can also control the saturation if I would feel like. And then inside of the shadow, or not shadow, the mask, I first generate the AO that was created. Then I use the levels to flip it, inverse it, and then I play with the sliders to get the correct intensity that I feel like working with. And then I create a paint layer where I use hard brush strokes. One of the brushes that I use the most is one that comes by default for Substance Painter, which is this knife brush. And I create these brush strokes and then I erase it. That's kind of how I made these sort of creases. And the smudge tool I used a little bit here. You can see it, that there's a hard line and then a soft line. So what I would do is I would first create a hard line and then I would blur the other side of it to create this sort of not bevel, but hump, a crease, on the character. Let's remove that. And then I create another layer that I set to light. And if the layer mode is set to light, it will only lighten what's there. It will not make anything darker. So if I erase something on this layer, it will not erase what is below it. It will just erase what's on the layer and nothing else. And then I make soft transitions on the sides so that the lighter part kind of protrudes and then the shadow parts kind of recedes a little bit. And then that's a soft add layer. And then I also have a soft erase layer. And you might not see it that much, but if I take this up, I try to make the shadows not as intense. And that kind of helps the sort of rounded effect that I personally like on these hand-painted textures. So that is the shadow. And then I just repeat this thing with AO and mid-occlusion. And I push in, nostrils and the teeth and the corners of the eye. And this matte layer only has one paint layer. I didn't care too much about creating extra. I felt like I got the look that I was going for, which is a hand-painted layer. Or not layer, what is this called? Yeah, it's called a paint layer. Okay. And all of these have the HSL perceptive filter on them. So I can, and for example, the AO needs to, of course, be darker than the shadows, otherwise it's going to look funky. And then for the bounce light, which is the parts of the shadow that actually lights up because the light bounces on a surface and then hits it, I make it slightly brighter. And when you create the bounce light layer, you actually by default create the terminus line where the shadow meets the light that is slightly darker. And that helps to create a more, not realistic, but like suddenly the shadows are not as flat as they would be otherwise. Here, like it's just one value, but just putting in the bounce lights makes it a little bit more rounded and feel a bit more, I guess, maybe realistic is a good word. So that is the shadow side. And then on the light, in the light folder, I do kind of the same thing, putting on a color and I created a paint layer first, where I did use the knife tool again. You can see how I did them here. I just did so, and then I erased. And that's how I create these shapes, sort of. And that's how I went over here. And then a soft add to soften it up just a little bit. If you go to the mask layer, you can see here it's quite harsh, and that's, might be a stylized look that you're going for, where things are more crude. But I personally like to soften it up just a little bit. And then to make everything pop, you add the highlight. And then you have not just the light is pushing things forward to the camera, and the shadow is making things recede. Not just that, but you also have the what's the word that I'm looking for? The materials. What is the word I'm looking for? What makes materials different? For example, the highlights on a metal will be way more shiny than the highlights on a rock. So you tell different materials, you separate them from each other. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to texture this one in one granite and then gold. Because one thing that I learned in the animation workshop by a teacher was that if you want to make materials appear more of what they are, be it wood, metals, rock, whatever, you generally have to put those materials next to another material. So if this mask was just gold and nothing else, it would be a bit difficult for you as a viewer to see, oh, does that actually read like gold, or is it just a yellow plastic thing? But as soon as you put it next to a different material, then suddenly you are more convinced that the material is what you're setting it out to be. So maybe granite and gold was not the best materials to put next to each other, because they're, one is a rock, one is a metal, but they're both kind of shiny. Maybe gold and wood would have been more impactful, but this is how I ended up going with it. Oh yeah, and also by having the light and the shadow in these folders up here and having them affect all the layers below, another thing that I think students can pay attention to elevate their art is to not just be happy with this granite, with this flat color. If you can introduce more color variations, specifically if you're doing a face, there's so much color in skin. So for example, and that's one of the reasons why I had this image up here. Like this is an art by Loish, and she is of course taking it to the extreme, but there's so much color that you can play with in a face. So what I did afterwards was that I introduced, first of all, gold bounce light, where the gold might be visible on the granite in its reflection. And then I just played with it a little bit more. I introduced eyeshadow, and then the teeth might want to stick out a little bit. And then rouge, if it was a human, you would put in a little bit of redness around the cheeks and maybe the nose. And suddenly it becomes a little bit more alive than if it was just one flat color. And then the granite is in this folder, and then the gold is in here. And it's a very simple, just putting what's it called, using the polygon fill to select them. And then here I just repeat the process. It's a little simpler, this folder. There's just one base color. I think I did not introduce color to gold because somebody told me once that gold actually does not inherit color from things around it. It will stay yellow. I'm not sure if that is correct, but maybe somebody in the comments can verify if that's true or not. And here you can see the exact same folder structure: shadow, bounce light, and then ambient occlusion, as well as the light and the highlight. Oh, over there. There we go. And then I have these HSL perceptives, so I can always, get the exact right hue that I want. And this is the thing that is a little bit more difficult to control if you are in 3D code and just painting on one layer. Let's say I wanted this highlight, only the highlights to be brighter and nothing else. Well, here I can very easily adjust it. But if I were to use 3D code or Photoshop, I would have to convert it to like a grayscale and then say, okay, only the ones in this value, control that one and make them brighter or darker or whatever.
Mm. Comment from chat.
So yeah, that is pretty much.
Yeah, comment from chat. Great advice on the gold materials. I also think so.
Okay, nice. So this was actually not at all how I textured Yone. When I textured Yone, I used 3D Coat and I did a lot of smudging. And I do remember that these bandages were a pain to texture because I did not separate the soft gradients and then the hard lines that are, over here, separating them from each other. So there was a lot of finicky brushstroke on brushstroke on brushstroke, and like I'm not that super happy with how it looks. It looks kind of dirty with all the brushstrokes that you can see here. So if I were to do it again, I would definitely use the workflow that I just showed you. So yeah, that was the texturing breakdown. And inside of here, also on my art station, you can also see breakdowns of the character and a marmoset viewer of him if you want to check the topology and all that. But yeah, pretty much that's pretty much it. That's how it's looking. I can show more in depth if anybody has a specific question about Yone.
For now, nothing. People in chat, you can see the link for a station and you can rotate this character. So you can check it.
Yes, nice. One more thing. Inside of Substance Painter, you can create a grayscale layer if you don't activate this Windows feature that turns things grayscale. And to do that, you create a paint layer, you set it to pass, and then it will collect all the layers below it. And then you can go to filter and search for a grayscale filter. And then it will turn it grayscale. There are different ways to calculate the grayscale. Here you have different modes, and I'm not 100% sure which one is more correct than the other, but this is an option as well if you feel like it.
We have a question from Chan. How do you approach the fabrics?
The fabrics.
Yes.
One thing about fabrics is that they are usually not shiny. Well, it depends on what fabric. If it's silk, then it has a shine to it. But if not, then you should not give it the highlight layer, for example. I would just give it the light layer. These smudges here are wear and tear, so they're not really the light and the highlight. But because this it's a cloth that he's wearing is very worn, I put them by the edges. But other than that, I kept it very soft as opposed to the metal, which has very bright and very dark parts to it. And the mask as well. Oh yeah, and one thing as well that I think is very beneficial is that when you are creating these highlight and light layers, I think personally it looks better if it's not just the same color as the layer below it. And what I mean by that is that over here we have, base yellow. And then for the highlights, I changed the hue slider just a little bit to the green side, just to introduce this variation that I personally have been told is, elevates your art. And I agree with that. So don't just color pick the same color and leave it at that, but adjust the hue a little bit. So what you can see here on the Yone is that this highlight is very like purplish. while the mask itself is very red. And that creates a little bit of visual interest, I would say. And here's the mask I used. And for these characters in my portfolio, I did not care about poly count or size of the textures. I just wanted it to look pretty. So this would probably not be allowed into the League of Legends game engine because it's way too heavy on poly count and the textures are way too large. And when you see how the characters actually look in game, they're very low resolution. And I just felt like I don't want to put that in my portfolio. I want it to look pretty. So I completely did not care about poly count or texture size at all. We can let's. I was thinking we could maybe show this in. There we go. So you can see a little bit better. So this is the wireframe. It's fairly low, but not League of Legends low. Yes, I actually don't have that much more to add, unless anybody wants to hear anything else.
Another question from chat. In the internet night or we found a style edge highlights are very readable. How do you decide which edges get a sharp um, metallic highlight versus a softer, more subtle edge to define the volume?
Could you send me the question?
Yeah, I'll send you all the question
Thank you.
in PM.
In the Ruined King or Wayfinder style, edge highlights are very visible. How do you decide which edges get a sharp metallic highlight versus a softer, more subtle edge to define the volume? I honestly think it's just feeling. I don't think there's a good rule of thumb. Like here, here's a little sharper, and then it fades off a little bit. And I just imagine the things that are, pointing out should pointing up should be sharper, and then it should like soften out. And you should not put highlights everywhere because if you do, it becomes busy for the eye to read it. So try to limit yourself to just a few points that you feel are visually interesting. I feel like the Rune King and Wayfinder, I love their art style, but they are not as reserved as I am with where to put highlights. They put highlights, all over the place. And they're able to make it look good. However, when I try to do the same thing, I personally don't like what I produce. So I am very much more shy in doing that. So the things that I produce end up more softer looking than the sort of gritty, detailed look of Rude King and Wayfinder. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes. By the way, if someone want to get know more about texture in Wayfinder style, you can find in the description our website with the course about Wayfinder style art.
Yes, and it's one of the courses that I took as I
Yeah.
prepared for Yone, and it was very, very beneficial. Another thing when it comes to these edges and highlights is that I personally like it when there's a hard line and a soft line that are working together. And as I said, that was actually one of the reasons why I stuck with Substance Painter, because I really, really like how their smudge tool work. So just to demonstrate again, uh, find it here. So let's say I want him to have more creases here. And then I use the smudge tool, and then I just blur it. And this blur is exactly how I want it to behave. It just like blurs it uniformly in a circle. The one in 3D Coat, when I used it, or maybe I used the wrong settings, it always had like a direction to it, which I did not like. So this is how I would work it up, you know.
At the same
Then I might
time,
think that
yeah, we have a question from me too. I love your hand-painted work. I'm curious, do you usually work with a full PBR stack, albedo, metalness, roughness, or you stylize it assets, or do you prepare the classic hand-painted diffuse only?
mm. Yeah, the project I'm sitting on now at Raw Power Games is a stylized hand painted project. So no metallicness, no roughness. Um, so it looks pretty much as I've shown you today. And I've worked there for about a year now, and now I feel kind of done, and I'm ready to see if I can learn anything more. I love taking tutorials. I think I have multiple tutorials at VSQUAD X. So whenever I feel ready, I will jump in there and do one of these character tutorials that you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you use PBR only for creating the base for texturing.
Well, I don't really use PBR, or do you mean when I generate the AO mask? Yes, I use the AO as like a template to see, okay, where's the shadow and not. But then I kind of minimize it or remove it completely at the end of it. So it's just there to help me a little bit get started.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're going getting to a close on this.
Mm-hmm. Chat, great, thank. I'm sorry if I asking so much questions. No, I don't think so. That's the problem. That's fine. Okay, so you can continue.
Was there a question?
It's not a question. The he or she say chat, great, thank.
Great. Yeah. No, I actually don't have much more to show. I'm pretty done.
Hmm. I don't see if you do something. on the screen. I see
What?
a Substance Painter now only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about it?
I see only Substance Painter now. You you
Yeah.
do
Did you want
nothing?
to see anything else? No, I'm not doing anything.
Oh, okay.
Should, yeah. Would you like to see more? Like, what should I don't have anything more on my to-do list.
Uh, is that all about presentation? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, John, for excellent
Thank you.
presentation. Mm,
Have a quick
okay.
one.
Uh, I also have some question. Uh, oh, and the question from chat. Do you use the brush on your workflow?
Is the question what sort of brush I use?
Uh, do you use ZBrush on your workflow?
Yes, yes, I do. So I use ZBrush to create the high poly version that I then use to generate these AO maps, for example. Let's see here. For Yone specifically, I created this. It was very, very fun to learn this. I worked on him on the side. So, you know, I had my job and then I would come home pretty tired and just do like 30 minutes, 1 hour. And it took quite a long time to finish him. But I learned a lot and I did consume as much like content that is League of Legends related or stylized related to try to get this look. And yeah, I used a lot of ZBrush. I used some nodes in Blender, for example, to create these ropes. I don't like how to create ropes in ZBrush, so there was a lot of back and forth between different styles in Blender and ZBrush to get the look that I was going for.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I
Okay. And question
maybe I
from
have
me.
the high poly here. Sure.
Yeah. What do you think artists should focus on first when learning 3D character creation?
What they should focus on.
Yes.
Oof. Um, I guess like there's so much stuff that you need to know in order to, for me at least, to feel confident in your own work. Like one of them is a base knowledge of anatomy and how to create stylized shapes. And for me, it took like how many years? Like four years of working in 3D before I felt okay. I like what I do. But I always learn anatomy. Don't feel like you have to learn all the anatomy all at once because that is impossible. There's so much to know about it. I still learn about it to this day, even though I have some foundational knowledge. Um, but that is a constant like thing that I have to update. And if I stop working on anatomy for a while, then I feel like I'm losing it. So I have to go back and like relearn it a little bit. That is one. The other one for stylized hand painted texture is a lot of color theory. Like, why did I choose this highlight to be purple instead of green? You know, how colors work together. What sort of highlight should this blue cloth have as opposed to this red one? The red one's shadows are a little bit purplish because if it was just red and darkened, it would look a little muddy. So the color slider that I mentioned before, they also help with making this not feel as muddy. Muddy means just that the shadows are looking a little bit dirty, and that can really bring a piece down. So studying that and learning that from artists like Loish that I showed earlier. She's an excellent artist when it comes to colors and shapes and whimsy. So I constantly look to other artists for inspiration for that.
Mm-hmm. And what are the most common mistake beginners make when creating the characters?
What is the most common mistake
Yes.
they make? Let me just put the high poly model here. Uh, Here's the high poly version. Uh, 10 million faces. So this is how it looked. Mostly from ZBrush, but also a little bit here in Blender. What is the most common mistake? I think the things that I felt was lacking in my art was usually like technical uh, technical issue, which was not knowing the anatomy and knowing that stuff. Um, One thing that I also emphasized more recently is to care about the presentation. That is something that is much more of an afterthought for beginner artists, that they spend so much time working on this character and then they're done with the character, they're exhausted, and then they just take a screenshot and like, okay, put it up on our station, I don't care. But if you give this character a nice background and put them inside of, make it look like they're inside of League of Legends, kind of elevates it, which is what I did for this one, for example. The background, I just took a nice cherry blossom painting from the League of Legends universe, and I blurred it, and then I used my brush to create these sort of sakura leaves falling. And it's just a little thing, but it elevates it a little bit more. I think it's way more interesting than my misfortune, which is just a bland, flat background. And then this is what I mean by putting them into the to make it look like it's inside of a game engine. This was done in Marmoset. In Marmoset, you can add a catch shadow layer, and then I export them as PNGs, and then I just take this background, which is from the League of Legends Summoner's Rift, and I just put him there to make it look like, oh, he's in there, but actually it's not. Same thing here.
Mm-hmm. And other question from chat. I have so much trouble when deciding which pipeline I'm going to use for environment stylized art. There's so many ways that I struggle to decide which way I'm going to make it. How do you decide it?
I don't decide it. I mean, I do decide it, but for example, now I focused on hand painted texturing because Riot Games has been my golden standard for so long. But now I'm kind of done with this, so I want to jump to the next one, more PBR, normal maps and such. I have always felt overwhelmed with 3D because there's so much to learn. Like I want to learn hair, I want to learn clothing, I want to learn simulations, I want to learn geometry nodes in Blender. And I asked my sister this, like, I feel overwhelmed, what should I do? And then she said, well, what do you want to do the most right now? And I answered, in that moment, I answered, I want to do programming. And she said, good, start with that. Don't think about the rest. So one way for you to decide right now is that you make a list of all the things you want to learn. And then you just ask yourself, what do I feel the most enthusiastic about right now? And then focus on that for a month or two.
Mm-hmm. And next question: is there any position as 3D or just character artist where you can work both on 2D and 3D departments?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is there any position as character artist where you can work both on 2D and 3D departments?
At my previous company that I worked at, it was a small indie studio, so I did both concepting and character. But I was also more of a generalist, so I also did environment pieces, which I hated. So I much more prefer where I am right now. But smaller companies, absolutely, you can probably work more with. You can work on both if you want to. But in bigger companies where I'm right now, we are separating the principals to one person. I do from time to time do paintovers, which is always delightful. So it's not like you are banned from doing 2D art at bigger companies, but do know that that's not the reason why I got the job. I got the job to create these 3D characters.
Mm-hmm. I also know that even if in the big company like Blizzard, on the project World of Warcraft, here artists work as 3D and 3D and 2D artists for creating concept and make model based on this concept.
Sorry, I zoned out a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Yes, yes. That's about this question. I just add that in Blizzard Entertainment, World of Warcraft project is a position where artists can make concept art like 2D and based on this concept art make his 3D model. So
Yeah,
that's both
exactly.
2D and 3D department.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was the last question. So thank you so
Fantastic.
much, Jonathan, for sharing your experience and workload with us. And thank
You.
everyone who stayed with us until the end of the stream and was active in the chat. Just a reminder that with VSQUAD School is open to collaboration. If you'd like to take part in a stream or if you a good author or mentor, feel free to reach out to us via VSQUAD School's email, or link in the description. And join our Discord community, follow us on Instagram, and stay tuned for announcements for upcoming stream. Also, be sure to check out John's social media, links in the description. So, see you at the next stream. Bye, everyone.